Welcome to Growth Gatherings. It's a platform where we share business stories from Pakistan and beyond. Our guest today, Arif Tahir. He's the CEO and MD at Nouveaux Pharma. Arif has worked for some of the renowned pharmaceutical companies, including GlaxoSmithKline, J&J, and Novartis. So let's welcome Arif. Thank you for joining us, Arif.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here and good to see you again.
Good to see you again, and we are meeting after a long time. It's been
Yes, we rather not say,
we rather not say, but
considering how young we both look,
we
if I
both
might
look.
say so.
Yes, and but
Just a few months away.
just a few months away, but I do
Dog
remember
years.
some of our trips were very special. And
Yeah.
again, back, I think it was
2000,
around 2005,
yeah, five.
right, in
Five.
GSK.
Yes, yes.
But you've done really well. And what I'm
Alhamdulillah.
really curious about, you studied engineering, and
Mhm.
then you did your master's in business administration.
Yes.
And then you were posted in Sahiwal. So tell me about your career choices, your educational preferences, and what you're doing right now.
Yeah, so for me, it's just like it makes sense connecting the dots
Ah,
backwards. I think at that point in time, the only thing was curiosity. I just wanted to make sure that whatever I'm curious about, I should do something to learn. And that was the only first principles with which I took up engineering, then realized, okay, the curiosity is
yeah.
well satiated. So next is about business and things like that. So then, yeah, then MBA, and then at that time, I mean, you recall, Sokat, it was like you finished top of your class, you had very three top companies, right? You got
Yes, yes,
P&G,
yes.
Unilever, and Shell. And
Huh.
then I interned in Shell, and then after the internship, Shell offered the job. So I was like, okay, done. So before even graduating, the thing was done. And then the next surprise, of course, came after the massive American Idol type assessment center, where we came to know that, okay, you are selected, and guess what? So you're happy 1 minute, and the next minute, they're like, guess where you're going? So where? Sahiwa. Oh, really? You're kidding? No, you're not. So,
Huh.
so yeah. But it was great learning. I think looking back, personally for me, for my career journey, having stayed all your life in Karachi and big city, and you never think of what's happening there. You read about it, but to go exactly there, and that memory of getting off that. So I took a train, right? Because they said, "Okay, you go to Lahore," and the office of Shell at that time was near the railway
Yeah.
thing, right? There was not even a stop. They said this the train stops there, so you can get off there. And I remember still in my memory with my two suitcases that I ride, like the Wild West thing done. And it's like, what to do? Nothing. So yeah, it was quite an experience,
Huh.
but a great learning one. I think starting in career in sales is always recommended,
Always
and so
recommended.
it was a great experience.
What would you recommend today? Because, as you said, you grew up in Karachi, studied all your life in Karachi, and then you ended up being in Sahiwal. Um, so today, if anybody studying and sort of starting their first job, would you recommend them, because now the career options are different, and but would you still recommend them to go to remote locations, or the sort of the tier 2 cities in Pakistan to get the exposure?
I think mobility, any point in your career,
Ah.
is important. It's a critical. You can't limit yourself to say I'm going to work here in this particular area and not here, right? And I think the earlier on, one of my biggest learnings, and this is what I advise people as well, is to make those moves earlier. It gets difficult as you get older. You've got family, and you're responsible for other things. So my decision even to go outside of Pakistan, and that point in time, I was very lucky to get that advice that at that age it's still easier to adjust and to learn. So I think it's always recommended, and that's what I tell my teams, that growth cannot just be vertical, right? It's lateral now. So you have to make sure that you have experience in different portfolios, different parts of the business, different cities. So the more exposure you have, the more lateral experience that you have, it makes you a very well-rounded professional going forward.
Yes, and that's why you were able to lead big regions later
Yes,
on in your
later on.
career, because of
Yes,
that curiosity and being
exactly.
that open minded. How long were you there in Sahiwal?
So almost like not barely a year,
And
and
then
And so from there, then the journey of the big beautiful world of pharma began with
Oh, the
GSK.
phone
So
call that you got
yes,
from a wonderful lady.
I know, from a very young lady who was just breaking into pharma herself.
Yes,
Yours truly.
yes, of course. So from Unilever to GSK, I just moved in.
Yes.
And GSK, because we worked together, you were on the product side, marketing side, very quickly, because then, I moved on to a different geography, and you moved on. So how did you go about making your career choices?
I think for me, I never thought I'll end up in pharma, and being coming one day, I still remember over the weekend and having 3 interviews in a day, and then getting offered the job, and I felt I felt there is some divine intervention here, right? And of course, coming back to Karachi was also a major part of the whole thing, but I didn't have any reason to look back or to change course because it had been learning, like I said. I was always curious to know things, and with all the different rotations that GSK offered me, it was a huge learning experience. So starting with the product side, then I ventured to business development, then got into M&A, and we did a whole bunch of acquisitions. So that exposure into various areas was fantastic, and I think once I got into business development and M&A at that point in time in GSK, I think it was 2009, 8, 9. I realized that there is more to the world of business than marketing, right? And from there, I then moved to Johnson and Johnson, and I remembered uh, parting quite amicably with GSK into saying that, look, I want to be a captain of a ship, and that ship is going to be small. I'm fine as compared to the cruise liner that GSK is. But it's important for me to, I felt that I can contribute way more, and I have more ideas to make sure that, we set the direction, to lead an organization and bring about all the things all the ideas that I have. I have a platform to make all these things happen, and I felt the J&J would be giving me that opportunity much more quicker, which it did. So yeah, then
And then you
J&J.
were,
And then I came back to GSK.
and this was in Pakistan or Turkey?
So no, it was from GSK called me back because we had another interesting role, which was the trade channel go-to-market
Ah, yeah,
model.
yeah,
And I
yeah.
remember they said, look, hey, you wanted to have something, a role like this. So how about coming back? And I said, okay. And I came back. And then from there, it was Turkey. And then, rest, like they say, is history. So since 2005, getting into pharma, where I never thought for the good part of my education that I'll ever end up in. This is what
You've
life
never looked
is.
back.
Yeah,
And
this
but
is
what
life.
what would you advise anybody graduating today? Because now the career options, the way people look at their careers or plan their careers, are a little different, right?
Yeah.
So,
Priya, what the advice that I give, I mean, my children and all the people that come to me for advice is, in your academic career, throw yourself fully into what you're doing. That's the number one thing. So something as little as, okay, I'm doing this particular course. You know what? I want to do something in tech. This is English literature. I mean, how is this going to help me in my life? No, this is your job now. This
so
is the
do
first,
whatever you
yes.
do, just do it with
Just
passion.
just throw yourself fully, immerse yourself,
Hmm.
give it your best shot. You
Yeah.
never know where it'll come in handy, but even if it doesn't, this is the job you have now. In reality, when you're going to get into a job, you're not going to love 100% of your job. You're going to love parts of it, 20, 30%. There'll always be 20, 30% that, you're like, why am I doing
Yeah.
this? But the point is, you do a damn good job of what you are assigned to do. So in education, do the best you can, learn as much as you can, and do a best job anybody can do in that role. Next, uh, remain curious and have that learning agility, because I think, as you said, that now there are multiple career choices. I think things are moving at a breathneck pace. Things that you study in university probably will become outdated later on, but that does not mean that you don't study. The thing is that what education is assessing, what your first jobs are assessing, is your ability to learn. So it's very important that you build that muscle to learn anything that comes, and how quickly you learn will give me as when I'm hiring, I would assess that okay, if something new is going to come in, which is going to come in, then how quickly this person can learn as compared to somebody else,
Huh.
right? And if somebody can prove it to me
Huh.
that look, I did this, and then this was something that I did not know. I learned that, and then this did, and then I learned something completely 360 opposite. That tells me learning agility, and that's the single biggest predictor in success.
Absolutely, learning. So to me, ability to learn and ability to execute.
But absolutely,
Because
100%,
if if
100%.
if you have these two qualities, you're set.
Exactly. I think and that, I think this ability to execute is so important because
Huh.
sometimes it gets overlooked a lot.
Huh.
And that is what makes it happen, right?
And it could be anything.
Yes.
If it's like I don't know, if you make social media, if you make videos, okay, execute.
Yes.
Learn and execute.
Impact is the most important thing, and I tell this to my teams as well, that yes, input is important, yes, having a great plan is important, right? But is that activity, is it leading to an impact?
Huh.
That is what's going to give you that exhilaration that I made something happen. And if you're doing something and it's not giving that impact, go back to the drawing board and see why is that. Don't be happy with the fact that you are doing an activity,
Huh.
and be happy about it. So every day think that, did I make a little bit of impact in somebody's life?
Huh. Now coming back, so you're heading Nouveau.
Yes.
And walk us through that journey. It was Novartis, and now it's Nouveau. How was this transition? What were some of the obstacle challenges, and what are the opportunities here?
Yes, I mean it was one heck of an experience. Um, I think my team, which may be watching this, they've been part of the journey, and we have tons of stories of things that we learned. We wanted to pull our hair at some times, and sometimes it was exhilaration. But so this transition actually got completed on the 1st of December. So as you know, from GSK, in GSK I'd moved to Turkey. So I joined Novartis as their country president and CEO in May 2022. So, I mean, more people know about my move to Nouveau now, I guess, because of social media than they
Yes.
did when I came back. And it was
Huh.
such a hectic time that I didn't talk to many people about this. But so May 22, I joined here, and then through various transitions and various things in December 2020, last year, 2025, we transitioned into Nouveau Pharma Limited. So basically, what it is now, to answer your question, is that we are now distributors and licensees of Novartis. So our current portfolio is the entire Novartis portfolio that we used to have. The shareholding of the legal entity has gone to II2L, which is an associated company of Moulin Phipps. So the entire team transitioned along with me, and the rest, like they say, is history. But yeah, lots of great learnings and interesting experiences.
Yeah, and it must be a great leadership journey. One is getting into those structured corporate roles, heading a big organization, but then getting into this M&A activity. And so what are some of the learnings if anybody wants to be the CEO or lead that M&A activity in Pakistan? What would you advise them?
So I think personally, for me, what was really important was to make sure that my North Star has been my purpose, and that purpose is linked to the legacy that I wish to achieve. And when moving to Novartis in Pakistan, one of the major driving factor was that when we look at the Pakistan pharma industry, and you've been closely associated with it, it's mostly for generic, and it's a general medicine business. And Pakistan usually, and when I was in Turkey, in every presentations you used to talk about that, no, these markets are not ready for innovation, right?
Yes.
And this is a common whichever company you go to. And I always used to ask, oh, why not? And what needs to happen? And
Yeah.
who's going to do it?
Huh.
We've got such great talent of
But sorry,
Pakistanis.
we don't have R&D centers. We don't spend on research. That's why this
So
perception.
a lot of countries are not manufacturing these innovations, so they come from their hubs, right? But it's just that there is a market, there is a healthcare system which values innovation, and obviously once the market is developed, then the next stage is manufacturing, and then eventually going. But I think we are well ahead in that journey, and because of no reimbursements, and there you'll have a laundry list of issues of why it does not make sense. But the point that I was thinking at that point in time was, who's going to change that? With all the talent that we have in terms of the people here and the people who are part of various organizations, Pakistanis, if not them, then who? And then I was like, why am I making this drawing room conversation sitting, and I'm myself sitting in Istanbul and saying, why don't people do that? Okay, why don't
Go
you go
ahead
ahead
and
and
do
do
it.
it, right? So when Novartis came in, my only question to them was, okay, I've heard Vas's JP Morgan speech, and how many of these products, by the way, are in Pakistan? I wasn't expecting any, because many other MNCs don't have those products. And I was surprised that of the 6, I think at that point 3 were already launched in Pakistan. And I was like, wow. So this is something, but obviously there are challenges, there are lots of other things, right? But that gave me a good start. So I was like, I have to come in and I have to make sure that we create an environment, a company, which sort of furthers and shapes the healthcare ecosystem so that it becomes more innovation friendly. And it's not going to be easy. It wasn't easy. And that journey from Novartis to Novo, shareholders, beneficial ownership might change, but that North Star, that purpose has remained the same, not only for me, I think also for my entire team. And that is what we are all striving. This has been our why, because we want to create a company which brings in innovation so that when we get old and when our parents get old, I wish and I hope and pray that nobody needs these medicines, right? But if they do, and the burden that we carry as healthcare people and people in the healthcare field is that we know that there is a treatment that exists. And if you know that there is a treatment that exists and that the patient or our loved ones do not really have to suffer, you feel kind of helpless that what have I done in all of my 20, 25, 30 years career if I am unable or if I'm helpless to ensure that that medicine is actually available for those patients here. And that is what we are trying to do. It's not going to be easy. I know people call us mad, but yeah, I guess somebody has to do it.
And the main therapy areas that you guys operate.
So we are in the therapy areas that we've chosen to be in are aligned very much with what Novartis was selling, and these are the disease burden of Pakistan as well, which is cardiology. You know the situation that we have in cardiology with high cholesterol and things like that, hypertension. So and then oncology is a big area that we are very big in. So we have the next generation. I always say that the medicines that we are bringing in 21st century medicine in a 19th century healthcare system. So basically in oncology, cardiology, immunology, and then we have a whole general medicines portfolio, which is products of local opportunity that we have in pain and other areas.
And what about patient access? Because I think these therapy areas are well spotted and very relevant for Pakistan. But patient access to these medicine, I mean, it's always the tier A clients who have access. So how, how do you see, not just, I'm not asking from Nouveau perspective, but generally pharma ecosystem to make sure that the medicines are accessible and awareness, prevention. I think that too. So because cardiology, diabetes, these are also preventable.
Yes.
So
yeah, that's a very good question. And I think innovation and access go hand in hand. And without access as an enabler, innovation cannot happen. And the reason why this is more pronounced for us in Pakistan, Fariha, is because unfortunately, we don't have healthcare reimbursement. So the government does not pay for your healthcare, and they would leave it for you to fend it off and work with the company. So the onus of making innovative medicines, and the cycle it takes, the amount of investments and money that goes in developing these new innovations, it's not that simple, it's not that cheap. So in order to the whole burden and the onus of making a product accessible then falls on the pharma company, which is not fair, I think. So there is a whole of the government approach, or that is the sort of thing that we are trying to create. That's why when I say an ecosystem, I think every part of this system needs to come together. But somebody needs to bring them together. And that is what at Nouveau we are thinking, and we were doing this with Novartis previously as well, is that we bring everyone together because
All the
all
stakeholders.
the stakeholders, because that is the only way in which we can even hope to crack this. So we do provide access programs. Some people might say that even if you bring it at a very low middle income country pricing, still you have a huge population that won't be able to access these medicines, and that hurts. But that's the point, that we all have to think as a country on what we are doing. And your point about prevention is also very good, because there is primary prevention when we are talking that nobody gets ill to begin with, right? That's a lot of lifestyle changes, and that's a whole different area which is very important. But then there's also secondary prevention. So for example, if somebody has had a heart attack, a myocardial infarction, MIA, and then these people have had one episode. Now there are medicines in place that if somebody has a high bad cholesterol is high, they don't need to suffer, right? They need to get on that therapy so that it doesn't happen again. So that therapy is available, but because of various reasons, patients don't get access to it, and then you have a second episode. So we're not just talking primary, we're talking at the secondary level as well. It keeps on happening again and again. So that is something that we have to crack. It's difficult. It becomes challenging, but I think that's why a different sort of a model is required to make it all happen.
And when you say different sort of a model, what model do you think?
So what I mean, having worked in a number of countries and having been working with the teams of a lot of countries in be it Vietnam or be it Latin America, Middle East, and Africa, and I've studied the various models very closely, and I think the model that we are trying to make with Nouveau, in my humble opinion, and I may be completely wrong on this, is a model in which local players partners with the big global innovators, because the global innovators have a lot of developed markets which are their focus markets, right? So they would definitely, that's general basic business sense, that you focus on your main priority areas, and that's what we are hearing in all the MNCs, right? And so what is needed is you take their innovation, and some local people or local companies or investors, even international investors who are more bullish on this part of the world in emerging markets, they partner, and then they share the risk, and then the rest of the stakeholders can join in and create a conducive environment. So that is something that we are trying to achieve. So the company is obviously owned by another international group, but then we now have the option of partnering with many other innovators and bring their innovation in. But obviously there are a lot of challenges. There is intellectual property. There are tons of other things that do come into place, but there is a way.
Yeah, and since you have worked or interacted with other countries, some of them are emerging markets, right?
Yes.
Any model that you see, you feel, okay, potentially Pakistan can follow that country's model to solve the health problem?
So there are a number of I think when you archetype countries, right? So there are countries in which healthcare is reimbursed to a certain extent. You've got the Turkish model, which I personally like the best. I think the government needs to realize that expenditure on health and education needs to bring healthcare outcomes, and that has to increase more. And it's not just equipment and building brick and mortar hospitals. It's also investment in therapies and medicines, right? Because what's the use of a huge fancy hospital with a lot of diagnostic machines when you don't have the doctors, or if you have the doctors, they don't have the medicines to
Not the right
treat, right? The right innovative medicines. So if you ask me, investment of the government in healthcare, I think that needs to improve. And there are various models. Obviously, when a government invests, then they can give some level of certainty in demand to the pharma companies, who can then give access pricing, emerging markets pricing, which they give in Turkey. So I think that model is very good. But if you look at the other spectrum, you've got various out-of-pocket markets as well, like Philippines and Vietnam. And there is a different model wherein many other stakeholders or alternate funding sources are available, which needs to be channeled and made sure that they deliver the outcomes that we are looking at.
And how do you see AI's role in solving our health challenges? Because do you think, do we have data? Do we know what are the big sort of problem areas that we have? And is there a way that we can get into early detection or early awareness so we can manage?
So there's a lot to unpack there, right? So yeah, AI is the buzzword, right? So
Huh.
everybody's talking about it, and my view on the same thing is that you have to look at AI in that perspective, that there is a part of AI which majority of the people are using, and that is just to save your time, right? So they make your life easier,
Yeah.
summarize your documents, write your emails, make things simpler for you, help you with the presentation, all the non value added tasks which were taking up so much of your time. So now it sort of enhances your capacity. So I think that part is there and that's welcome, but I think we need to move beyond that, because the time that AI is freeing up, what are you using that time for?
Huh.
If it's just to have a, politics have a longer lunch break, and so there's no point of spending that much money. But at the same time, in terms of making meaningful healthcare impact, I think in the global area, it's in drug discovery, right? But like you just mentioned, we are not in drug discovery locally. So for us, I think it needs to be, I see various plausible use cases in terms of removing the friction that a patient has to go through to gain access to the medicines. How can we make sure that the various reimbursement options are sort of the patient has to navigate them, it makes it easier for them to navigate, right? So I think that patient centric AI adoption is something that we need to work on. And I mean, we have teams in our company who are actually working in order to make sure that our processes are such that we leverage this AI to make sure that it delivers the outcomes that we desire.
Longevity planning, right? It's a huge sort of focus, at least in the first world. How do you see that in Pakistan? Because I'm sure there are different classes, income classes. For some, there may be a focus in terms of longevity planning, the quality of life, and then you have the other spectrum where potentially they don't even have access to basic medicines. So as pharma, and I'm again talking more, thinking more pharma community, how do you see this disparity and how do you address both the groups, their requirement?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, right? I think that's a luxury that currently, if I look at the broader spectrum of Pakistan, I think that's a luxury that I don't think we have, because if I'm looking at it from a government's perspective, I think they need to make sure that the healthcare budgets, which are meager, like I said, obviously if they are limited, they need to be sort of directed towards the segment that you talk about, which, the bare necessities that need to happen, right? But at the same time, I would expand on your question a little bit in saying that quality of life is not really it's not really a longevity or it's a good to have. I think in our parts of the world, we have just chosen, we have, it sounds odd, but we have chosen to suffer, which we need not. And we have been conditioned to the fact that, you know what, live with it. This is what life is. So if a woman is suffering from breast cancer, for example, surgery, chemo, surgery, chemo, and then the lady is like, you know what, enough. But that doesn't have to be. Now there is oral therapy, there is a tablet that they can take every day that keeps cancer away. It's like a medicine has evolved, and that is why I'm saying that it's evolving at such a breakneck speed that the innovation is becoming a norm, and we are still stuck. So I think once the innovation comes in, the quality of life improves, which is not really a longevity or a good to have or a high social, as a high socioeconomic classes that okay, only we deserve. I think that's very condescending approach. I think that needs to be democratized, that needs to be available for all the patients, right? And that is why we need a healthcare ecosystem where everybody comes along. And the model, you alluded to earlier in one of your questions that it's not just one party that can do it. So I know that I will be in a fool's paradise if I say the government needs to do it. It's very easy to say, okay, it's me and you, and we blame the third person who's not here. So it's not just the government, it's not just the pharma company, it's not just the doctors, not just the patients, not just the NGOs, it's all of us, right? So if all of us come together with the common purpose that, this is the way of life, this is the health that we promise our people, then we can make it happen. And once you get the purpose right, Fariha, what I've seen is that when we started with this thought that we're going to make this company, and we were part of Novartis at that time, and I told the team that this is our purpose. Does it resonate with you? And everybody, and we did a whole company-wide thing, and it was such a this was the common belief. People wanted to make this happen. And once we started on it, we found out that there are so many avenues that are there. Philanthropy is at the highest levels in Pakistan and the whole world, right? So there are a lot of avenues. I think the key is to get the message across.
So now slightly switching gears, because another question that people have, and again, your story from Novartis to Novo, right? People are saying, oh, the multinationals are moving away, and what about the corporate culture? Because you and I, we work for companies who are known for their corporate culture, but those are very international, multinational corporate cultures, right? As we say, meaning their headquarters is somewhere else, and we were their subsidiaries. But then today we see a lot of multinational, but from a different perspective, right? They probably are based here and working across the region, etc. So you, as the CEO, how much effort or time do you need to uh, have to bring that culture that it's still progressive and it's still sort of attractive for newcomers to join?
Actually, interestingly, when Novartis asked me to come back to Pakistan and lead this, their first ask was to bring about a cultural transformation for various reasons. It wasn't business. It wasn't the fact that, look, we want to make more profits out of this place. It was more like, how can we have a psychologically safe culture, a compliant culture, which sort of is and I always call it like that's the license to operate, right? So that's the very basic that needs to happen. So culture, I think it evolves from there into the working culture that we are talking about, and I think that's super critical. I think there is like this model that I was reading of. It's the attitude drives behavior, and the behaviors drive culture, right? So
Attitude drives behavior.
and behavior drives culture, right? So you
Correct.
start with the right attitude to things, and culture is how you and I act every day. And it's not I firmly believe it's not putting up pool tables and having
No.
gyms and things
Yeah.
like that. It's for me, it's very simply how an associate, or we call our employees our associates, who associates, when they leave work, how are they feeling? Are they feeling bad? Are they feeling, yeah, what a day, Yeah, work stress is good, right? I'm not talking about that. I'm just saying that in terms of are they feeling good about themselves, about the people that they work with? And I think that's fundamental. I think that's fundamental for any organization. And for me, that's the real measure. And people talk about MNCs and local. I think if you peel that onion a bit a bit more, it's actually the culture that they're talking to.
It's a
Talking
sense
about.
of belonging.
Yeah. So they know the general thinking is that, look, if it's a multinational, there will be checks and balances in place, which would make sure that the organization culture would be strengthened and it will be good. Whereas in a local organization, it's touch and go and maybe good. And so that's like a broad stroke generalization that we have had.
Absolutely.
And I think that's not the fact. I think it's unfair. I think there are multinationals where culture is not good, and there are local companies where culture is fabulous. So I think what needs to probably change, if you ask me, it's very leader driven. And
It
I
is very
know
leader
I know there's leadership role modeling. That's a given. I think that's very important. Role modeling is fundamental, but I think we need to institutionalize that to such an extent that it's not driven by one leader. So if one thing that I want to put in my company is, if the culture is good, and I hope it is. I'm not sure. I don't want to make tall claims. I always challenge myself for that. But it should be in such a way that if I move, would the culture sustain? I think that's the true test. It's not what the culture is when we are at the helm of affairs. So it's fundamental. I think that needs to happen. And for that to happen, I think companies need to move from having a transactional view with their employees. It should not be, okay, tell me how much money would it take for you to join us. So I think we start off on the wrong foot. Candidates start off with money and comp and not the culture. Now, if I ask somebody that, you given the two, which one would you take? 90% would say comp. It's okay, we'll deal with the culture later. And once they join, they realize that, you know what? I call it the headache premium, right? It's how much headache you are willing to tolerate in a culture. And if you're getting paid more than that, some people are happy, some people are not. And at certain point in our careers, money doesn't matter. It's more like, how you feel about yourself. It's your well-being that's more important.
Yeah.
So it has to move from a transactional understanding from the employer side. But from the employee side, they also have to realize that a good culture does not mean non-performance or taking things easy,
Complacency,
or taking not understanding the spirit of a policy and maximizing as much as you can without performing, because then that culture is at risk. So I always tell my team, we have a very strong culture, and once we transitioned, this was the most common question that was asked of me in the town hall: Arif, will our culture remain the same? It will remain the same. Yes, we'll make sure we'll guard it because it's hard fought. But you also, employees and associates, also have to think of what are those things which can attack a strong culture. And this is poor performance. That is not delivering on the outcomes. When these things don't happen, the first victim from any owner or employer perspective is the culture. They say, okay, forget about the culture, let's talk performance. And then it's a slippery slope. Then you don't recover. Then the culture is gone because nobody then fights away. They say, okay, you know what, I'll leave the company and I'll go elsewhere. So both of them have to go hand in hand.
I think that's a really good point, because I've been in HR and I've worked a lot on employee engagement and seen the surveys. And you're right, there's always this correlation: high performing culture, like high performing results, and good engagement.
Yes.
I've never seen an organization where the performance, like the financial performance, is low and brilliant engagement. Similarly, companies with sort of low financial performance, almost every time they also have low engagement, because you're
Yes.
right, then nobody has time. Everybody's blaming each other, and your true north isn't there. And if it's a commercial organization, regardless of the industry, financial performance is as important as the employee engagement or any other parameters
Yes.
within the
Yes.
organization,
In
in an ethical way.
and it's we have this thing in the company which is like a high support, high challenge culture, right? So you need to support the things, but then you have to challenge them as well, because one sort of a culture could be that you can have if it's a nice culture, that's not good, right? I always say that it's just like in our field, a nurse is never nice. If you have a nice nurse, good luck getting better. Because she said, oh, it's okay, you don't have to take that medicine, you don't have to take this. I'm so nice. You have to be kind.
You have to
right?
be kind.
Be kind, but don't be nice. And if you can manage the nuance or the polarity of the whole thing, then people have to realize that my line manager is kind, but is giving me that high support, high challenge push.
Talking about your career, since we discussed, you started in sales and then pharma, you switched companies, you switched geographies. What did you learn about yourself in terms of things that you feel you had to work on to become better as a leader and where you are, and things that you found out about yourself? Oh, this is what I'm good at. Both the things.
Yeah. So I think the biggest realization and the big aha moment for me in my leadership journey was that, coming from the culture that we come in, leadership and growth in the hierarchy, it rests a lot on what you know or ought to know and having all the answers.
The
Right?
high IQ.
Right? So it's just like, okay, I'm now the boss, I need to have all the answers. Then I become the big boss, then I need to have all the answers. And if I'm the CEO,
You need to be
sorry
Google.
for being blasphemous. I'm Google godlike. I can pass judgment on just about any topic under the sun, and people said, boss, you are absolutely right. You know what? You need to be the president.
Huh.
Not the country president of the company, but president of the country,
Huh.
because you got this right. And we're
Your
like,
chat GPT for everything.
yeah. And you know, I would say that those who even have bother going on chat GPT and learning are much better. You've got people who would not know it, they would wing it, right? And people would make them sound so smart that the
Yeah.
next time they say anything with very little
Huh.
knowledge, they would, you know, I don't know what's called, the Duncan Kruger effect or something, right? So they would just think that, you know what, I know everything. So I think that's the false expectation that we put upon ourselves, that I need to have all the answers if I am at the top, and if I don't have the answers, you know, I'm not going to be there. So that vulnerability part was completely missing. And when I moved outside of Pakistan, I think the first learning for me was that just be comfortable with the fact that I don't know. Right? Because if you go in filled to the brim in saying, you know what, I know everything, I think is disrespectful to the other person, in the sense because you're applying whatever your reality is on their reality. And B, you then do not get to know. So that curiosity of genuine curiosity of knowing what the reality of that particular market is, of that particular country is, and then to help them further, I think there's a next step, was the biggest learning. Because you go in, you want to prove yourself, you go straight to solution modes. You say, okay, let me fix it for you, right? So I think there is a step before fixing. If we fix it together, but first let me understand you, right? So I think that was the first biggest leadership transition that I had, which was that, you know, I don't have all the answers, but I sure have a lot the best questions, right? I think for the leader, it's more important on the quality of the questions that they have than all the answers. So that's for
Yeah.
me is critical.
So I think, and it's great. Thank you for sharing. I think two things that you mentioned: vulnerability, because I think it's extremely important. We feel, if we are senior, and even people expect, why are they being honest, or somehow we expect people to be, I don't know, godlike. Whereas human beings are human beings, and everybody has a right to be vulnerable. Number two, curiosity.
Yes.
And I think sort of I do coaching, and it's interesting, especially in this part of the world, there is this tendency, you tell me, you tell us, or boss aap bata dein. And I'm like, boss, nahi pata. Why? And explore yourself. But I think it's one, having a leader who's comfortable being vulnerable, but can also ask questions so that they have a better understanding. But also people to be comfortable that, look, you've got to find your own answers.
Yes.
Nobody will tell you, and if they are telling you, they are not the right leaders.
Yes.
And I
Absolutely.
think, to me, that shift, how are you finding that shift?
So I think for me, it came naturally, in the sense that, like you said when you started off this podcast, that I moved from a very non-medical background. So
Yeah.
when I joined GSK, I actually did not know things.
Huh.
Right. And I remember I used to put myself as an early product manager into a lot of stress, that, okay, I need to have every question that anybody possible can ask me. And I know my boss actually gave me a very good advice, and when she said that, it's easy, it's okay. If you don't know the answer, it's okay. Relax, right? And so for me, it's always been a continuous learning journey. So I have never had all the answers, because from a product side, I always had to rely on somebody else to guide me and teach me. And that person can be a medical representative, it can be a somebody in the medical department. And even now, I tell my team, you guys know more about this than I do. I bring a different set of strengths. I can help you structure, I can help you bring the, simplify the complexity, put in a framework, run the business, tell you the commercial side of things. And yes, I do know about the product now, having spent 20 years, but it's always being learning. So every day I still, spend a good half an hour to learn about the latest science, because science is evolving so fast. So even our medical department sometimes, say, oh, okay, we have to read up on it. So that has remained true with me throughout these years. So for me, that transition was sort of forced upon the fact, because I didn't know. But I think from a business side, commercial leadership side, I think going abroad, working with different countries in GSK, I think that was a huge learning moment. And when I've come back, I've brought this back, and this curiosity is the major value that we have in the company, because it takes courage, right?
It takes.
This is the real courage, the courage to be vulnerable and to say, you know what, I don't know, but you do. And so it's very important to, I say that it's very important to get it right, then be right. So to get it right, just lean in on the people that are around you, and hopefully you'll get it right.
Yes, yes. Final round, it's called a rapid fire round.
Do I get a coffee hamper at the end?
You do. You get a coffee and hamper maybe later.
Coffee I already had, so I'm looking forward to the hamper.
Okay. We owe you one, right?
Okay.
Okay. One word to describe Pakistan's pharma industry right now.
Fragmented. You want me to unpack that?
A bit, yes.
I think we still have this divide, right? Local pharma, MNC pharma,
Yeah.
original,
Yeah.
not so original, the OGs and the not so OGs. I think we need to evolve into collaborators rather than competitors. There is so much to do, and it cannot be done in silos. So I think it's fragmented right now. When you've got 800 odd pharmaceutical companies, and 95% or 98% of the market share is with 100, makes you wonder.
And focus on healthcare solution, right, for the country rather than,
Yeah.
So, agree. Karachi or Istanbul, which one has better dessert?
Tough one. Istanbul.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
which one?
Lots. I'm a chocolate fan, so I mean there are so many that
Any favorite shop or cafe?
I'd rather not say.
You rather not say?
I still have people following me who are in Turkey, so I don't want to do that.
Yeah, okay, yes, maybe, but I agree. I mean,
But I'll sure give you my list of recommendations next time you're there.
yes. So Karachi has great food. I've lived in Istanbul also for about 3
Yes,
years, so I've
so
got my
list as
favorites
well.
as well. But it's a great city. Agreed. A leadership quality that you can't teach.
So I would disagree with the question respectfully. I think there is nothing about leadership that cannot be learned.
Oh, interesting.
Right.
Good perspective.
I don't believe that you're born with it, but I also believe that if somebody has to teach you leadership, you're starting off all wrong. You can't rely on somebody else to do this for you. I think you have to learn it yourself.
And you bring your own signature style. We
Yes.
all do,
And you
right?
can learn it. But if
Yes.
you're waiting for somebody to come in and say, hey, let's sit together today, I'm going to teach you leadership, good luck being a leader.
A global market that Pakistan pharma industry should be closely studying.
I think Vietnam. I think I'm really impressed by the journey that country has had, particularly in pharma, from a small outpost to now being a priority market for many of the pharmaceutical companies. I think that's a model that needs to be studied. And I think what we were talking about earlier, right? Having worked with teams in Vietnam, the one thing that struck me about them is their curiosity. They are always eager to learn. They know that these are the gaps and I don't have the answers. I really want to know, how can you help me? Versus many other markets who would say, what are you going to help me with? I already know everything. So, okay, good luck.
I think it's the attitude.
Self-awareness is something that, needs to be assessed.
Yes. And how do you stay sharp or relevant? Do you study? Do you sort of watch podcasts or?
Reading is something that I love.
What are you reading these days?
So one of the quirks that you can say that I have is I can never just stick to one book. So at a given time, I'm reading 3. So which is weird, right? I don't know why I do this, but
Well, actually, I also do. I read too, because I think reading one book is like too much commitment. But when I have 2, I'm like, okay, I'm fine. It's diversified.
I would rather not link it to our commitments because it doesn't all go well. So other than books, I'm very committed, for the record. But yeah, when it comes to books, I think once I have something on my shelf, I have to start. I just can't leave it. So right now, to answer your question, I'm reading Inglorious Empire by Shashi Kapoor. I'm reading Reinvent by Fred Hudson, and I'm reading Diary of a CEO by Steve Bartlett, I believe, yeah.
One decision that you've taken in your career, which at the time was a bit risky?
I think opting for MBA, because when I finished my engineering, I actually got a scholarship from the government of France and Pakistan to do my MS. And at that point, I actually, the criteria was I had to write of what I want to specialize in, and this was 2003, 4. And at that time, I wrote that, I see cell phones, and that time cell phones were not that around. So I wrote that, this is going to be the one technology that's going to revolutionize every industry. And for that, they would need some trained technical people. And that's why I wanted to do an MS in telecommunications. So I started learning French and crash course. And in between, a couple of friends were actually saying, you know what, Arif, you're going for the IBA test. It's supposed to be hard, right? Nobody clears it. I was like, oh, really? And then, okay,
I'm
let's
going to
go.
prove it to you.
Let's go.
Yes.
And then we did. And once you got in, you're like, you know what? I got in. And then you're thinking, that's an interesting piece to study. I never thought about it. This is
So
also
again, it's
something
your
that you study.
curiosity, no?
So I said, okay. And then I dropped that. And I think it was the smartest decision that I ever made.
So one thing you've changed or you do it differently now to attract and retain talent in your organization.
I think I always check two things: the fit of the candidate with the company, and also how does the company fit into the career trajectory or journey of the
Their
employee,
ambition.
right? It's very important to look at it at both ways.
Huh.
Otherwise, because sometimes what we do is we just see, okay, this candidate, how will he or she help me fit? Where will she fit? What will we do? What is also very important to see how we fit into their whole career journey. What are we bringing to them that helps them succeed and shine? And sometimes, there are other motivations for people to join, and that, I think those are weak motivations. So I think it's very important that when you're attracting talent, you also see what value you bring into their career. So I think that's one. And second is that we give a chance to fulfill a purpose and leave a legacy. I think there are very few industries where you can easily fulfill a purpose, because if you are bringing an innovative medicine that changes the life of somebody suffering from breast cancer, there is nothing like it. So to get that purpose, if you're selling, with all due respect to people who do selling soap and shampoo, to find your purpose in that is difficult. I think it is possible, but it's difficult. But in this industry, this is the legacy that it allows you to leave, to make a real difference. And I think that's such a strong motivator for somebody to be part of a company and make a meaningful impact.
Thank you, Arif. It was wonderful to have you.
Thank you for having me.